What if I told you that the greatest cover-ups in history weren't sophisticated, carefully planned operations executed by brilliant criminal masterminds? They were spectacular, embarrassing, jaw-dropping disasters. A president who erased 18 minutes of tape but forgot to destroy the other 600 hours. A government that hid a nuclear accident by turning the exclusion zone into a nature reserve. A man who faked his own death and then immediately applied for a pension using his real name. And by the end of this video, you will never trust anyone who says, "Trust me, nobody will find out." Wait for number 15, because the dumbest cover-up in history was hiding in plain sight for 30 years. Subscribe to hear more bizarre stories. Let's descend into 15 cover-ups so dumb you won't believe they were real. Cover-up number 1. Baghdad Bob, Iraq. March 2003. American tanks are rolling into Baghdad. The invasion is visible on live television. Journalists on the ground can literally see the tanks from where they're standing. Mohammed Saeed al-Sahaf, Iraq's information minister, known globally as Baghdad Bob, holds a press conference. He announces that American forces are nowhere near Baghdad, that Iraqi forces are crushing the invaders, that the Americans are committing suicide by the hundreds at the city gates. Behind him, through the window, American tanks are visible rolling past. Reporters are struggling to keep straight faces. Cameras are capturing everything. Baghdad Bob doesn't flinch. He doesn't stutter. He doubles down with the confidence of a man who has never once considered that other people can see what he cannot. He became an international meme before memes were a thing. The cover-up lasted approximately as long as it took journalists to point at the window. Cover-up number 2. Watergate tape gap, USA. Richard Nixon's White House secretly recorded every conversation in the Oval Office. Every single one. For years. When investigators discovered the recordings existed and demanded them as evidence, Nixon's team had a problem. Their solution? Erase the incriminating parts. Specifically, 18.5 minutes of a crucial conversation recorded 3 days after the Watergate break-in were mysteriously erased. Nixon's secretary, Rosemary Woods, demonstrated how she accidentally erased it by reaching for a phone while keeping her foot on a transcription pedal, a physical position that required her to stretch like a professional contortionist. Experts later determined the gap required at least 5 separate manual erasures. Here's the beautiful part. Nixon kept all the other tapes, 600 hours of them. Those tapes eventually destroyed his presidency completely. He erased 18 minutes. He kept 600 hours of evidence. The cover-up was dumber than the crime. Cover-up number 3. Soviet Chernobyl denial, USSR. April 26, 1986. Reactor 4 at Chernobyl explodes with the force of 500 Hiroshima bombs. Radioactive material shoots 2 miles into the sky. The Soviet government's response? Say nothing. Their plan was apparently to pretend the largest nuclear disaster in human history simply hadn't happened. This strategy worked for exactly 2 days. Workers at a nuclear power plant in Sweden, over 1,000 kilometers away, started setting off radiation alarms just by walking through security scanners on their way to work. The Swedes initially thought they had their own leak. When they checked their reactors and found nothing wrong, they traced the radioactive particles back to the Soviet Union. The Soviet government was confronted with radiation evidence from a completely different country before they admitted anything had happened. They tried to hide a nuclear explosion. The wind told on them. Cover-up number 4. Piltdown Man, England. In 1912, amateur archaeologist Charles Dawson announced the discovery of the evolutionary missing link between apes and humans. A skull found in a gravel pit near Piltdown, England. Scientists celebrated. Museums displayed it. Entire academic careers were built around it. For 41 years. In 1953, researchers finally subjected the skull to proper scientific analysis and discovered it was a medieval human cranium attached to an orangutan's jaw with the teeth deliberately filed down to look more human. Someone had stained the bones with chemicals to make them appear ancient. For over 4 decades, the world's scientific establishment built theories around a fake skull assembled from mismatched animal parts by someone who apparently thought scientists would never look too closely. They didn't. For 41 years. The greatest scientific hoax in history survived because experts assumed other experts had already checked. Nobody had checked. Stay with me because what's coming next gets significantly more embarrassing. We're about to meet a man who faked his death and immediately claimed his own pension. A government that hid a nuclear disaster by calling it a nature reserve, and a spy who signed his own crime scene. Cover-up number 5, Fyre Festival, Bahamas. Billy McFarland and Ja Rule promised the most exclusive luxury music festival in history. Influencers, gourmet dining, luxury villas. They charged up to $12,000 per ticket. What attendees found when they arrived: disaster relief tents, soaking wet mattresses, feral dogs, and the now legendary dinner: 2 slices of bread, a single piece of cheese, and a sad salad in a foam container. One guest photographed the dinner and posted it online. It went viral within minutes. The entire cover-up, months of elaborate social media deception involving Kendall Jenner, Bella Hadid, and a mysterious orange square, collapsed in a single evening because someone photographed their cheese sandwich. McFarland received 6 years in federal prison. The most sophisticated influencer marketing campaign in history was undone by a foam container. The cheese was the evidence. Cover-up number 6, Milli Vanilli, Germany. Rob Pilatus and Fab Morvan were the biggest pop act of the late 1980s. Grammy winners, millions of albums sold. Their faces were everywhere. They had never sung a single note on any of their records. Producer Frank Farian had used completely different studio vocalists and simply put 2 attractive men in front of the cameras. The cover-up worked perfectly until a live performance in 1989 when the backing track started skipping, repeating the phrase, "Girl, you know it's," over and over, while Rob and Fab stood on stage with their mouths moving to completely different words. They ran off stage. Their Grammy was revoked. Lawsuits piled up. Milli Vanilli became the dictionary definition of fraud. The cover-up survived years of scrutiny, television appearances, and interviews. It was destroyed by a skipping CD at a concert in Connecticut. Technology betrayed them. Technology always betrays everyone eventually. Cover-up number 7, Enron. Star Wars names, USA. Enron was committing one of the largest corporate frauds in American history, hiding billions in debt through fake offshore shell companies. They needed names for these companies, names that sounded legitimate, names that wouldn't attract attention. They named them after Star Wars characters. Chuco Investments, named after Chewbacca. Jedi, Joint Energy Development Investments. Kenobi Inc., Obi-Wan Holdings. The people hiding billions of dollars in fraudulent transactions apparently couldn't resist naming their criminal enterprise after a science fiction franchise. When federal investigators started unraveling the scheme, the Star Wars names became an immediate shorthand for how spectacularly arrogant the whole operation was. Enron's collapse wiped out billions in employee pensions and shareholder value. But at least the people who lost their retirement savings can take comfort in knowing the shell company that stole their money was named after a Wookiee. Cover-up number 8, Roswell weather balloon, USA. July 1947. Something crashes on a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. The US Army Air Force initially issues a press release stating they have recovered a flying disc. The next day, they change the story. It was a weather balloon. Just a weather balloon. Nothing to see here. The problem with this cover-up was the cover-up itself. The original press release had already gone out. Newspapers had already printed it. The rancher who found the debris described materials unlike anything he'd ever seen. Military personnel who handled the wreckage described unusual properties. Then, in 1994, the Air Force admitted it wasn't a weather balloon. It was a classified surveillance balloon from Project Mogul. They spent 47 years insisting it was a weather balloon when the actual truth, a classified spy balloon, was significantly less interesting than what people had started imagining. The cover-up created the conspiracy theory. The truth was boring. Hold on, because the next cover-ups get even more spectacular. We're about to meet a man who tried to hide a murder by sending the body to himself by mail, and a government that painted grass green during a drought. Cover-up number 9. Volkswagen Dieselgate, Germany. For years, Volkswagen marketed its diesel vehicles as clean, efficient, and environmentally friendly. Behind the scenes, they had installed software in 11 million vehicles that detected when the car was being emissions tested and temporarily activated full pollution controls to pass. During normal driving, those controls switched off and the cars pumped out nitrogen oxide emissions up to 40 times the legal limit. The cover-up involved 11 million cars across multiple countries and required the cooperation of engineers, executives, and compliance teams across the entire organization. It was uncovered by researchers at West Virginia University, who ran real-world driving tests and noticed the emissions numbers were wildly different from lab results. Volkswagen paid over $30 billion in fines and settlements. They programmed 11 million cars to specifically cheat on tests. The cover-up left a paper trail in 11 million vehicles. That's 11 million pieces of evidence. Cover-up number 10, Jussie Smollett, USA. In January 2019, actor Jussie Smollett told Chicago police he had been attacked by 2 masked men who poured bleach on him and tied a noose around his neck. The story made national headlines. Outrage was immediate and enormous. Then investigators started pulling the thread. The 2 attackers were brothers who personally knew Smollett, and Smollett had paid them for the staged attack with a personal check, a traceable, bank-issued, documented personal check with his name on it. He essentially signed a receipt for his own fake hate crime and handed it to the people he hired to attack him. Smollett was convicted of disorderly conduct in 2021. The cover-up lasted approximately as long as it took investigators to check his bank account. He paid for a cover-up with a paper trail. The check was the cover-up. The check was also the evidence. Cover-up number 11, Theranos, USA. Elizabeth Holmes founded Theranos with a promise that would revolutionize medicine. A device that could run hundreds of blood tests from a single drop of blood. Investors poured in billions. Holmes graced magazine covers. She was hailed as the next Steve Jobs. The device barely worked. So what did Theranos actually do with the blood samples from real patients? They secretly ran them on standard commercial machines made by Siemens, hidden in back rooms of their laboratories. Employees were instructed to keep these machines out of sight during investor visits and media tours. Whistleblowers eventually broke the silence. Journalist John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal exposed the fraud in 2015. Holmes was convicted and sentenced to over 11 years in prison. She hid the real machines behind walls during tours. The walls were the cover-up. The walls were also the evidence. Cover-up number 12, Fake Hitler Diaries, Germany. In 1983, German magazine Stern announced the historical scoop of the century. 60 volumes of Adolf Hitler's personal diaries, secretly preserved since World War II. They paid 9 million Deutsche Marks for them. Forensic scientists examined the diaries. The paper contained chemical whiteners not manufactured until after 1954. The ink contained materials unavailable during the war. The binding included polyester threads that didn't exist in the 1940s. The entire collection had been forged by a man named Konrad Kujau, who had aged his forgeries using tea and household staining methods. Stern's reputation was devastated. Here's the beautiful part. Kujau was so confident in his forgeries that he had also been selling fake Hitler paintings, fake Hitler letters, and fake Hitler memorabilia to collectors for years. He was eventually caught because he forged his own lawyer's signature on a document. He couldn't stop forging things even when his freedom depended on it. Stay with me, because the final 3 cover-ups are the most spectacular failures of all. Cover-up number 13. Soviet photo editing, USSR. When Soviet officials fell out of favor, got arrested, or were executed, the government would airbrush them out of every official photograph. The problem was, Soviet photo editors were apparently not great at their jobs. They'd erase a man standing in a group portrait, but leave behind his floating hand on someone's shoulder. They'd remove someone from a balcony scene, but forget their hat, just hovering in mid-air like a ghost accessory. In one famous case, the same photo of Stalin with a group of officials went through so many rounds of editing that it eventually became just Stalin standing alone, like the world's loneliest graduation photo. Entire books have been written about these botched erasures. The Soviet Union tried to rewrite history with airbrushes. They succeeded in creating some of the most unintentionally hilarious photographs in human history. The floating hats gave everything away. Cover-up number 14. Fake village, North Korea. For decades, North Korea maintained a village called Kijongdong directly on the border with South Korea, visible from the southern side and from the joint security area. The village appeared to have apartment buildings, schools, a hospital, and a functioning community. South Korean and American observers eventually noticed something strange. Nobody was ever seen entering or leaving the buildings. The lights in the apartments turned on and off on a timer. The buildings had no interior walls or windows. They were hollow shells designed purely to look inhabited from a distance. The entire village was a movie set, a propaganda prop designed to make North Korea look prosperous to anyone watching from the south. They built an entire fake village and forgot that binoculars exist. The cover-up was visible from the other side of the border with basic optical equipment. Cover-up number 15. Richard Nixon Enemies List, USA. And here's number 15. The dumbest cover-up in political history. Richard Nixon, already the president who kept 600 hours of self-incriminating tapes, also maintained a written enemies list, a physical, typed document listing political opponents, journalists, and celebrities he wanted to harass using government agencies. The list included over 200 names. It was typed up, filed, distributed to staff, discussed in meetings that were recorded on the same tape system that was already destroying his presidency. When the list was discovered during the Watergate investigation, it became one of the most damaging pieces of evidence against him. Nixon was so paranoid about his enemies that he created a documented paper trail of his paranoia and filed it in the same building where investigators were already looking. He kept a list of people he was afraid would expose him. The list exposed him. Stay with me to realize something deeply uncomfortable. Because the real question isn't why these cover-ups were so dumb. The real question is, how many smarter cover-ups are still working perfectly right now because nobody has found the floating hat yet? 15 cover-ups, 15 spectacular failures of basic intelligence. Every cover-up failed, every single one, because the truth always finds a window. If this video made you feel significantly better about your own decision-making, hit that subscribe button immediately. Drop a comment. Which cover-up was the dumbest? And do you think there's a cover-up happening right now that's going to collapse just as spectacularly? Share this video with someone who thinks they can get away with something. Consider it a public service. Next video, we are uncovering 15 ancient myths proven real and 15 technologies buried to keep you dependent. You don't want to miss it. Subscribe, comment, share. And remember, the cover-up is always dumber than the crime. See you in the shadows.